What is up, everybody? How's everybody doing?
Hello, thanks for being here, everyone.
Can you believe this is our 10th Women Who Rock? This is the 10th episode. And I'm going to tell you, folks, I don't think Shannon has been more excited about any of them than this one. Truly, when she got the email that Julie was down to do this, I possibly have never seen her that excited, right, babe? I mean, you were very excited.
Yeah, I mean, I have followed the Murray family and Maura's case for quite a while. A lot of you know about it because it was one of the very first real, viral cases on social media. And their dad, Fred, he has so much grit and tenacity, and I have always loved him. And then he kind of passed the baton to Julie, and I've just been admiring how wonderful they've been for so many years. And so I was so grateful that she wanted to come on with us. And I'm grateful that we get to do something for her. And we're going to put out her sites and things as much as we can so that we can help her and her dad out.
Yep, they are in there. I see our mods are already sharing them. Thank you so much, guys. Uh, I guess with any other intro you want to, babe? Remember, this is
I'll
your.
do the intro for her. So Julie Murray is a United States Academy at West Point graduate. She's a United States Army veteran. She's fiercely advocated for searching for her sister Maura since 2005. I'm just going to give you a little background. Maura disappeared on the evening of February 9th, 2004, after her car crashed on Route 112, Haverhill, New Hampshire. Her whereabouts remain unknown to this day. Maura was a standout athlete. She was enrolled in the nursing program as a junior at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. Her family continues to advocate and actively search for answers in an effort to find Maura. All right,
All
and
right.
with no further ado, let's bring on Julie.
Hey, Julie, how are you?
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it. And what we normally do on this show is we ask the first guest that Shannon asks is to ask what you were like as a child. But before we do that, we wanted if you could tell us about Maura, about her personality, her interests. I heard you in an interview talking about her, and you said that she had a deadpan sense of humor, and also she was great at talking smack. So I feel like we would have gotten along. I would have gotten along very well with her. So tell us about Maura.
Well, first, again, let me say thank you. I haven't been on a YouTube live in, I think, maybe ever, maybe one time. So this is great. Thanks for inviting me. And I just want to say that I do have I think I'm coming down with a little bit of a sickness. So if my voice is a little cracky, just that's why. But I am doped up on Dayquil, so I should be good to go.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and fighting through it.
Of course, yeah. And Shannon mentioned that my dad and how he's gritty and tenacious, and he was just down visiting me the past week, and it was his birthday on Saturday, so I was trying to keep up with him, and I think that is part of the reason why I am sick, because he he is full of energy and in such great shape, especially for his age and everything that he's been through. So yeah, I'm recovering from his visit. Yeah. But gritty is a great word to describe my dad, and he's still that way today. So a little bit about my sister Maura. She was 2.5 years younger than me, and she was the baby of the family for quite a number of years before my little brother Curtis came along. So there was my older brother Freddie, and then my older sister Kathleen, myself, and then Maura. And so when Maura was born, we welcomed that because now we had someone to torment, and I was no longer the youngest. So she got her fair share of teasing and, how siblings do. But she held her own, and she developed a competitiveness, I think, because of that, having to deal with all the older siblings. Maura was an outstanding athlete. She was an amazing runner. She made it to nationals in the 2 mile event in the country. She finished 33rd, which is unbelievable. And she did that as a sophomore in high school. And she also played all the other sports. So any season it was, we were out playing sports. And we grew up in a small town south of Boston. So there wasn't really much to do. And we had a big family. So we just played sports during whatever season it was, and then made up our own games when we were bored. And the other thing to do in the small town we grew up in was just do your schoolwork. So Maura was an outstanding student. She was on the National Honor Society. She graduated 4th in her class. She had astronomical SAT scores. Math and sciences just came really, really easy for her. It wasn't that way for me. So she actually helped me with a lot of my schoolwork. It was kind of funny because I'm 2.5 years older. But, as for as smart as she was and as talented as she was so humble and so very kind to anyone that crossed her path. And that's something that I've tried to carry with me and honor her with by the way that I present myself and advocate for her, is to honor that humbleness and kindness and spread that around while we try to search for her, because she is still missing. One story that kind of encapsulates the essence of Maura was during one of our summer vacations. We would always go up to the White Mountains of New Hampshire. And it was in the summer, of course, and so there wasn't any snow, but there was this thing called the Alpine Slide. And this was up on Attitash Mountain. And so what it was sort of like if you picture a bobsled track, but without the snow or the ice. So you had this cart and you had this lever and you pushed the lever forward to accelerate. So there was two of these tracks on the top of the mountain, and you take the cart down, and it was fun for kids or whatever. But Maura was so competitive that she always wanted to race me down the Alpine Slide. And I'm like, okay, yeah, sign me up for that. I'm a competitor. I'm not going to let my little sister beat me. And so we would be side by side, and she would just go screaming down the mountain. And she had a better grasp of the laws of physics than I did. So she knew just how much to accelerate around those sharp corners. And so one time I was, my ego got in the way, and I'm like, how in the hell is she going so fast around these corners? And so I accelerate on the corner, and my sled flips off the side of the track. And, I was a teenager, so of course I was immune to getting too hurt. But what Maura did was she stopped her sled. She actually picked her sled up and put it onto my track. So she was ahead of me when she didn't see me, and waited for me because she was concerned about, if I was okay. And then the minute she saw me back on the sled, everything's fine, she just takes off, and she was already on my track. So she's, solidified her win in that race. But that just kind of tells you about Maura and how the different aspects of her in one quick story.
That's awesome. Can you tell the free throw story? Because that story is so cool. Being you're from Boston, that must have been really huge.
Yeah, it was really huge. So every year there was a high school free throw tournament championship, and each school had to nominate people and would take 10 free throws, and then you'd kind of go into the next evolution, and there was sectionals and all this. I don't know how it worked. But anyway, Maura made it all the way to the finals. And the finals were going to be held at halftime in Boston Garden on the old floor. And it was just, for a sports fan, it was epic. And of course, I got knocked out of the tournament earlier. So I, kind of volunteered myself to be her ball girl. So at least I could go out onto the Boston Garden. And yeah, so she shot, I think it was 10 free throws, and I think she made 8 or whatever. But it was such an awesome experience.
That's so cool. Sorry, babe, go ahead.
It is. Well, I just wanted to know about you as a child. What was your personality like? So are you truly like the middle child?
Yes, I am. I am the middle. Um, and, I'm a lot more serious than Maura, more structured. Maura was more of a people person, and I was kind of like, no, we need to follow the rules. We need to focus on our schoolwork. Maura was a great student, but she didn't have to work as hard as I did to get good grades. So she was a lot more fun than me, more of a free spirit than I was. And that's kind of why, looking back, why I think the military and the military academy was just a perfect fit for me because of the personality that I have. And, being the middle child, I was the typical peacekeeper and kind of referee. I have all those traits as a middle child. But you can tell that we're sisters, but we definitely had our own personalities.
So it sounds like the structure. That's why you went to. Is that why you went to West Point? Tell us about like getting into West Point and you're going there and your career in the military.
Yeah, well, coming from a large family, we didn't have a lot of money, so I knew kind of early in high school that I needed to either get a scholarship for academics or get a scholarship for athletics. So that's kind of why that was my main focus in high school, because I knew my parents weren't going to be able to pay for 5 kids to go to college. So when I was a junior in high school, I went to the summer program at the United States Coast Guard Academy. And it was a week-long program, and they just immersed these high school people into cadet life. And we're marching around, and we're getting yelled at, and we had to do push-ups. And for some reason, I just loved it. And so my dad picks me up it was New London, Connecticut. And I'm like, Dad, I love this so much. Like, this is so me. I want to do this. And then he introduced the fact that there were other service academies that I could do the same type of thing and could get yelled at equally as much and also do push-ups. And so I ended up getting a recruiting letter from the cross-country coach at West Point. And I realized that if I go to West Point, I don't have to go spend a lot of time on a boat and be on the water, because that's not something that I was, wanting to do. So I go out to West Point, I do my recruiting visit, again, fall in love with it. And then I applied and got in, and, it just suited me so well.
By the way, I've been doing a crappy job but the mods have been putting all the links in. Make sure you're following Julie on Twitter, TikTok, and the official website is there too. So check that out. And immediately when you go on there, you can sign up for the mailing list. So sign up for that. Thank you, mods. Just keep putting those in there, the links. Check out TikTok. Check out Twitter. I have not been mentioning that, but the mods have been putting in there. There it is. Thank you, guys.
And definitely one of your similarities to how you described your sister was your humility, because I don't know if you all are aware in the chat, but only about 9.8% of people get accepted into West Point. West Point is 77% male and only about 23% women. It was probably less than that in the 90s. I don't know that for sure. I tried to find the statistics for that, but couldn't find it. And you also had to have a letter from a congressional, a nomination to go. So it wasn't like, and it's wonderful for everybody who just, goes and gets recruited anywhere. It's still amazing, but this is like another level of prestigious, and you deserve all the accolades for that. Can you tell us a little bit about your career in the military after you graduated?
Yes. So once you go to West Point, it's not like the regular college experience. It's nothing like the regular college experience, and you do have to do all these hurdles to get in. And both Maura and I got a congressional nomination from the late Senator Ted Kennedy out of Massachusetts, and so it's just a lot to just even get in. And so once you're in, there's the three aspects. There's the military aspect where you're learning leadership, tactics, and then the academics are super hard, very heavy on math and sciences. And then there's the physical component. So as you stated, there's only a small percentage of women at any of these academies, the Naval Academy, Air Force, or military academy. So if you can stand out in the physical component, then you're going to be ahead of your peers in terms of respect and all that kind of stuff. So when I went in and when Maura went in, we were runners. So we were naturally kind of holding our own. And, the male cadets were like, okay, who's that Murray girl? She's keeping up with us in the fast group. And so it's kind of like an instant respect thing. And so that we use that to our benefit, of course. But back to your question. So once you graduate from West Point, you owe 5 years active duty service, and then you owe 3 years of individual ready reserve, meaning that you're kind of on call. So you might be out of the military, have another job, and then get called up if needed. So when I was at West Point, that's when 9/11 happened. And so I was a senior at West Point. So I'm already locked in, committed to my 5 years active duty service. And so I knew, that this was not what I expected going in. We weren't at war. So it was a whole different paradigm shift from when I started West Point to, okay, now I'm graduating and we're at war. So I graduated, and in my infinite wisdom, I decided that I was going to trade my really great 3-year Germany assignment. So my assignment was 3 years in Germany. I didn't like the idea of being away for 3 years, so I traded it for a 1-year tour in South Korea. And, looking back, I'm like, what an idiot. Who does that? And it kind of all worked out. So right out of West Point, I got sent over to South Korea, and it was a journey because, I didn't travel a lot or ever in high school or anything, and so here I am thrown into a foreign country, can't read the signs, we're driving on the wrong side of the road, and I was just homesick. And the only thing that saved me was being able to write back to Maura and communicate with her through instant messenger saying, 9 more months left, 8 more months left. And so she kind of helped me even get through that period. So yeah, I was a ordnance officer, graduated as a second lieutenant, made it up to captain. And, I love the military. But when I finished my tour in South Korea, I went back and I was stationed at Fort Bragg, and that's when Maura went missing. And so the trajectory of my military career was significantly or completely altered, because here I was thinking, this is going to be my career. I love the military, but oh, by the way, my sister's missing from a small town in New Hampshire. I can't be stationed in Hawaii or, Colorado and not be able to have quick access to be able to get home, because at that time, we never anticipated that Maura would be missing for this long. And so I did my initial commitment of 5 years, and then I got out of the military because I didn't want to risk being, sent to Iraq or sent to a duty station that wouldn't give me access to my family in New Hampshire.
So you are now thrust into into being the point person, essentially, right, for Maura and basically for your family. And you're an introvert, right? Much like me and Shannon, you're an introvert, and this is not natural for you, but you want to do this because, you talk about like, if you stop talking about a cold case, it becomes frozen, right? So can you talk about being like the point person that is dealing with your sister's case?
Yeah, well, I wasn't. My dad was running everything. He was kind of the commander, if you will, using my military terms here, of the boots on the ground effort. And I was still in the military, stationed at Fort Bragg, so I couldn't get up here, up there when I wanted to. It was all dependent upon what I had going on in the military. So I was kind of in the background, which was actually really good for me because, I was still immature. I was still young. Maura went missing when I was 24. I still didn't really know what was going on. It was still a lot for me. And it took me several years to get to a point where I was emotionally able to handle all of the additional trauma that goes along with this unresolved loss. It's really the worst kind of loss, being in this kind of gray area of unknowing. And it's so hard psychologically because you just don't know. And so I played that, bench role for a while. And then when my aunt by marriage, Helena, she passed away, she was running all of the online groups like Topics and MySpace back in the day. And she started the first Facebook group. And once she passed away, my dad looked to me and said, "Jewel, you're up." And, I knew what he meant. And so I kind of stepped into that more public facing role to try to help raise that awareness because, Jay, you're right. These cold cases will go colder if you allow that to happen. And so raising awareness, putting yourself out there to talk about Maura, to humanize Maura, to remind people that she was a real human and not this character that she's become online by strangers who never met her. And so that's kind of how I picked it up. And I'm glad that I did. And it's not easy, but I'm doing the best that I can.
Well, that's why you're on our show, because you are a woman who rocks, because this is not easy for you, yet you're coming on a live show here. I'm sure you'd like to be doing other things, but you're not going to let it become cold or frozen, and you're going to keep more out there. And it's just huge. And that's why you rock. But go ahead, babe. I'm sorry. I cut you off.
No, you didn't. I love that. I have a sister and you're her voice. And I love that, even if you would rather, kind of be in the background, you're kind of taking that part of her personality, that she was more the people person, and you're putting yourself out there to be the person for her. And it's beautiful. And very poignant. I wanted to talk a little bit about your challenge that you have given to the true crime community. This is just excellent about your hashtag and your program of engagement with empathy.
Well, unfortunately, I was thrust into true crime. I had no interest in true crime, but now I'm in it and I don't have a way out. And so I have a lot of experience. I have going on 20 years of experience in this space, and I've observed a lot. And something that stuck out to me was that there is this gap between creators and consumers and the real humans at the center of these tragedies. And, having seen the evolution of technology, we talked about Maura going missing before social media, before podcast, before any of this stuff that we have. I've seen the power and the good that it can do, and I believe in it. And But the thing that I see is that unless we close this gap, people in real life tragedies are going to be treated as entertainment. And I've experienced that and I've felt that. And so I said, you know what? We have an empathy crisis in society, and we definitely have an empathy crisis in true crime. And the way to bridge that gap is to infuse this space with just a little bit of empathy to make it so it's not so voyeuristic. And so creators and consumers can understand that when you're talking about this young woman that went missing and her family, we're real. And, you know, I wanted to bring awareness. And so that is why I started the Engage with Empathy campaign. It's for that awareness. And, you know, what warms up cold cases are leads and awareness. And so this is just one avenue that I'm pursuing to help warm up a case that's cold and keep awareness on it. Because, you know, my biggest fear is that Maura becomes a file in a cabinet. And so while we warm it up and we, you know, talk about my sister, we should be doing it with empathy because she's not a character. And so I kind of took this concept and I created some pillars and a kind of quick acronym that people can use as a quick reference. And it's called CARE. So treat these real life cases as, you know, with care. So C is center the victim. You know, if we're covering a story and the victim isn't the centerpiece, you really have to ask yourself, what are we doing? What is the point of this? The A is avoid harmful speculation. You know, in my sister's case, there's speculation all over the place because we have so few answers. And it's easy to just read something online and just accept it as fact. And that's harmful, both to the investigation and the families that have to wake up to it every day. And so that leads into the R, which is research responsibly and do your due diligence so that you're not just reading something on the internet and saying, oh, that must be true. You know, you need to do a little bit of research so that you're not spreading that misinformation. And then finally, the E is engaging with empathy because, you know, these true crime exists because of these real life tragedies. And so as consumers and creators, there's an inherent responsibility to handle them with sensitivity. And so I thought by kind of shining a light on that, creating a roadmap for how it could be done a little bit better might make it easier for the next family. And it's been very well received and I'm seeing changes and I'm just glad to be a part of it. And I hope to see true crime just get better and better. You know, there's always going to be the loud minority or the loudest voices that are going to get the most attention. But as consumers, you can vote with your clicks. And so if you see something that isn't treating these cases with care, you don't have to listen to it. And so what you're seeing now in true crime is a bunch of people, and just like me, regular people who have no training in this. We weren't given a guidebook when our loved ones were met with tragedy, but we're just doing the best we can. And so people in my position are now taking control and speaking for their voiceless loved one. And I think that's kind of bringing those two extremes together and bridging that gap. And that's what I wanted for the campaign. And I'm just so happy that it's been so well received.
It's awesome. And thank you for leading the way and kind of, I think, having all of us take a second to take a step back and just remember what it's all about. And, you know, it's great. So thank you for doing that. And speaking of kind of social media and branching out, can you talk about a little bit about your TikTok, which we've been sharing? I think you have over 250,000 followers on there. You have quite a large following. Tell us about getting into, I mean, we started with, you talked about MySpace, and now we're in TikTok. Tell the folks about, you know, your TikTok and the experience that you've had on there.
Yeah, well, I mean, it all goes back to how technology can be used for good. And TikTok is a prime example. in these other mediums of social media, you're kind of limited to your reach in terms of the algorithm. But in TikTok, your reach is kind of just limitless. And so you never know who you're going to reach. You're going to reach people that aren't even into true crime. You're going to reach people that have never heard of, your particular case. And I've seen that. I've posted hundreds of videos on TikTok, and I've gotten messages from people from my hometown that didn't even know. And it just blows my mind because my world is Maura Murray. And I'm thinking, of course, everybody knows Maura Murray, but they don't. And so by using TikTok, I'm reaching a wider audience, a new audience, and it's not this echo chamber of the same people rehashing the same ideas that, it's great. I love discourse and conversation as long as it's victim centered, but Maura's still missing. And I believe that someone out there knows something, and I need to reach that person. And so I'm going to use anything that I can to do that. And so TikTok is just another avenue, and it's been awesome.
And like you said, you're getting people who know nothing about it, which sometimes is good because I think you talked about this, but sometimes they'll frame something in a way that you've never thought about because they aren't looking at the same thing that you've been looking at the same thing over, but you're getting different perspectives, right? That helps a lot just to kind of maybe open your eyes into something you didn't think about before.
Oh, that is so true. And I get messages like that all the time. And it, because I'm so in it, and sometimes I don't take the macro view, and these other people just looking at just a little 30-second TikTok video is like, well, did you notice that? Or have you, just tiny little things. And that is what is going to move us forward in solving this case. And so that in combination with doing things like this and the other social medias, and it's not to say that people that have followed Maura's case for 20 years aren't contributing. They certainly are. But I'd like to see newer, fresher eyes and different sets of opinions. And I think you get that on TikTok. And one thing that I'll add, and this goes back to the Engage with Empathy campaign, is, bridging that gap between just consuming these stories and then going about your day. When you have to see my face on TikTok and I'm telling you about the worst day of my life, it establishes a little bit of empathy, just having that face to face. And that's something you don't get with, 140 character tweet. And so it's been very helpful in that regard. And, I encourage other people in my position. I know it's a lot to put yourself out there, and, you're going to get the trolls and the haters and the people that are just going to disagree with you just to disagree with you. But the vast majority of people are wanting to find ways to help. And
I think you're under the mindset that I'm under, which is don't feed them. They're going to say stuff, just block them or just ignore them. Don't feed them because that's what they want, right? They want you to come back at them, and then you're giving them what they want. And sometimes it's so hard. I'm sure I can't even imagine for you how hard that must be to people talking smack to you, and you just want to be like, ugh! But it's just better to just leave it, right?
Yeah, it is always better not to feed the trolls. And it's pretty easy when you see someone trying to provoke you. And that is another reason why I'm thankful that I had the opportunity to go to West Point and spend some time in the military, because it gives me that pause and that ability to kind of take a step back and not respond emotionally. I mean, there are so many times every single day that I just want to just go off on the internet. And I'm thinking to myself, I need to be true to what I'm telling other people, and that is engage with empathy. And so by me going off on some troll online, how is that victim-centered? How is that furthering the case? Does that get us closer to finding Maura? And if the answer is no, then I shouldn't do it. And I need to hold myself accountable. And I'm proud of the way that I have done that, and I haven't been emotional and, kind of lashed out. There have certainly been instances where I've been tempted to, but at the end of the day, it's not about me. It's not about my reputation, so it's about my sister Maura. And I don't need to lash out at trolls to that's not going to help. And that's not a good use of my time or my energy. So I have the military to thank for that.
I think maybe your latest TikTok has your dad in it. And I mean, first of all, he looks amazing for his age. I swear he hasn't aged, and I don't know how he's done that because he's been through all of this. And I mean, he is just, he is like the embodiment, I think, of never give up. And he is on there. And another thing that you mentioned, like now you have new eyes looking at all of these things. And for your dad to is on there, and he's talking about when he first saw your sister's car. And it is so, TikTok is such a great way to refresh all of the actual information about what happened, because you're able to hear, okay, well, this is the misinformation that's out there. And then, here's the person that was there, and this is what they saw. And, it's just invaluable that the two of you are working together on that. And I just hope so much that this is going to reach the person that you need to reach. I wanted to ask you to give us an update on Maura's case. Whatever you can say about what you're working on right now is wonderful.
Yeah, I just want to go back and touch on my dad. My dad has been through hell. Every parent's worst nightmare is losing a child. And then add on top of that, not knowing what happened, not knowing where she is, not knowing any of those answers, and still getting up every day and doing what you need to do. And so I'm going to get emotional talking about this, but, I just love my dad so much, and he has done so much to be, the strength and the rock for everyone in my family, myself. And I've seen how he's just laser focused on his one goal, and he doesn't let anything distract him. And, when he was here, I'm telling him about this or that, and he's just, none of that matters. It's just Maura. That's the only thing that matters. And so he's just an amazing man. And I don't know how he's doing it. He's done it. But he's still going strong. And he doesn't know anything about TikTok, but he he has these ideas for things that he wants to say on TikTok. And I'm like, no, Dad, that's not how TikTok works. And so I have to kind of shut all his ideas down. And but he was gracious enough to do the last one with me, which was awesome. And it also humanizes him. He's not this monster. He's this poor old guy that is just trying to find his daughter. So in Maura's case, we always have leads coming in. Always, always, always. And especially after she's in the news, we have an influx of leads and tips that come in. And of course, I share those with law enforcement. And typically in the last few years, my family has teamed up with some other advocates that have helped us kind of run down some of these leads that aren't necessarily to the level where law enforcement would spend resources. So we've hired, our own cadaver dogs. We've hired, we sent stuff to a lab to get tested. My family paid for it, Othram Labs, in coordination with law enforcement. So we're always doing something. And we have a few leads that we're working on right now. But my next big thing is next month in November, meeting with the Assistant Attorney General of the state of New Hampshire. And, I meet with them. I haven't met with the AG's office in quite a while. I do meet with investigators, not as often as I'd like, obviously. But to have a November meeting is key, because then I can get a case update and then, share what we've been doing, and hopefully they'll share something that I can run with. And I love this new collaboration that I have with law enforcement, because, before my dad was kind of the conduit between my family and the investigators, and now I am sort of the conduit between my dad and the investigators. And so I'm not as aggressive, I guess you'd say, as my dad's, but I still have his list of things that we want to work out. So early November, I'll have that meeting, and so hopefully I'll be able to share, updates on then. But come February, it marks 20 years since Maura's been missing, so it's a very sad milestone, a huge milestone. Never in a million years, going back to February 2004, would I ever think that she would be missing for 2 decades. And so we'll have an event up in New Hampshire. We're working out those details for that. And I have another few projects that I'm working. Can't wait to share. Those will be coming up. But, it's just constantly answering questions, talking to people, making visits to New Hampshire as needed, and working these leads.
It's funny, you're talking about your dad and the TikTok. It reminds me of my dad. He sends me tips. However, he sends it from his iPad. And you know how you're supposed to, you type your message and then it says send from iPad? My dad sends the message after. So the email leads with sent from iPad, and then he's sending his message. So that kind of just made me think about his. So, but first of all, it's been 45 minutes, and you've been amazing, and we can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing your story and talking about Maura. What I wanted to know, what can we do and our viewers do to best help you and Maura? What can we do?
Well, if people ask, that's probably the most asked question that I get. The best thing to do for a cold case is to continue to talk about the victim and to continue to raise awareness. And can be as simple as sharing a missing poster. And people are like, oh, no, that's not enough. I want to do more. That's huge. Sharing a missing poster is huge. And I work with this great group called Light the Way, Shannon and Tate's, and they have made missing posters for not only my family, but other families that they advocate for. And they post them all the time. So, just hitting a like or just engaging with that type of content is so critical, because, somebody outside of your true crime echo chamber might be friends with you outside of true crime and might see that like and be interested. And then, it's kind of a domino effect. So engaging with that type of content is so easy and it's so important. So that's the best thing. And that's what I ask, is to keep the care principle in mind and continue talking about these cases that still remain unsolved. I mean, Maura is just one of thousands, and there's other families out there that need help.
Yeah, I mean, I say it all the time. Like, a retweet doesn't cost anything on Twitter, or a share on Facebook, and you just never know whose eyes are going to see it. Same with TikTok, like you're talking about. So, it goes a long way. But go ahead, babe. I'm sorry.
I was just going to ask you if you all were still doing the scholarship.
Yes. So last year we started a scholarship at the high school that everyone in my family graduated from. Well, all the kids graduated from. And we gave it out to a student that excelled both academically and athletically. And this past year, we gave it out to a young woman who was captain of the cross country team, and just a standout student, but also had that competitive spirit that Maura had. And so those are kind of the 3 criteria. And so last year, my dad and I went and presented the scholarship, and we met the family and the student, the recipient, and she was so thankful and very kind. And I was like, oh, Maura would love you. And so it was a bittersweet moment.
Babe, I normally do the bow thing, but I feel like you should do the bow thing. Do you want to do it?
Oh, sure. So whenever we have guests on our show, I don't know if you watched the Murdaugh case at all, but it happened in South Carolina, and we learned, we had never heard this before, but in South Carolina, they say Bo as a friend, like, hey, Bo. And so on our channel, we say that to each other, and that's why we're called J-Bo Nation. And we just want you to know that you're our Bo now. We have your back. We are going to, and our people are going to make sure that we are watching out for you on the internet, and that we're seeing the care principle being upheld, and that we are going to share things about Maura, and making sure that that's the research, doing the research first to make sure it's actually official, sharing right from your TikTok and those types of things. So we just want you to know. And someone eloquently said in our chat, it was Missy Mayhem, one of our moderators. She said, "Thank you for sharing Maura with J-Bo Nation."
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much.
We seriously, you're awesome, and the message is amazing. And you're gonna see on Twitter, a bunch of our J-Bo Nation is gonna come, and they're gonna they're gonna retweet, they're gonna be there. So, and we always appreciate when people are kind enough to come on our show with us and share their stories and just come on. So, welcome to J-Bo Nation. And I guess was there any final thoughts or anything else, Julie, you wanted to share with everyone?
No, I mean, I this was great. I think we covered a lot. It's hard to kind of condense Maura and the whole aftermath in an hour, but I think we hit the highlights. And so, I'm so appreciative. I let my dad know I was doing this, but again, he doesn't know what a YouTube Live is, so I'll let him know how it went. But just to everyone listening and supporting, thank you so much. It means the world to my family.
All right, guys, go ahead, babe. Sorry.
You'll have to tell Fred that there was a lot of love for him in the chat. A lot of people were, putting hearts in there for him. Shayna from Light the Way is here, and she put your dad's quote, "We're coming for you, kid," in here. Yeah. So you'll have to let him know that he was a big star in the chat.
Good. All right. I like that.
All right, folks. So we've been putting the links in. Follow on Twitter. Follow on TikTok. Check out the website. Keep Maura's name out there. And I think that's it. So thank you so much, Julie. Our 10th Women Who Rocks, and Julie absolutely rocks hard. So thank you so much. And good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, J-Bo Nation. Please give all of yourselves an ovation. No, it won't be real long until next time. Oh, J-Bo Nation, there's no place we'd rather be. J-Bo Nation is the place to 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 be.